You'd expect that, Jews would also get a break.
What do we need to tell everyone?
Antisemitism really reach an interesting height on college campuses.
You're connected with the future leaders and the future builders of the Jewish community.
Antisemitism did not begin nor end with the Holocaust.
Is it a crazy idea that our job in the world is to unite people?
We're not free until we are all free.
He's got a major in forensic science and sociology. He's got a master's in international studies. These days, he's a campus regional manager.
Who are we? What are we supposed to be?
Josh Mitchell Arbital, reveal yourself.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
I grew up with a very strong sense of resiliency for the Jewish people and understanding of everything we've overcome, and understanding of that from a very young age.
And but not a religious family, right? Like not, but going to synagogues on weekends, on holidays. How does it?
Yes, so we actually grew up practicing conservative Judaism. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I went to a wonderful conservative synagogue known as B'nai Emunah. Amazing synagogue, amazing community and congregation. Grew up going to services every Saturday, as well as keeping kosher for the most part. Of course, over the years that I haven't been the best with keeping kosher, but was a little better when I was younger. But overall, just I would say it was a very positive Jewish upbringing.
It sounds super ideal. I almost feel a little bit jealous. What was the there's like a lot of pride around it. Like you're not like
Absolutely.
jealous. I mean, you're not ashamed of being a Jew. You're not scared of how your classmates look at you. You don't feel weird. You don't feel other.
No, actually, I would say, and also I'll break it up a little bit. My childhood from I was born in San Diego, California, and went to school actually at a private Jewish school, San Diego Jewish Academy. I went there before my family moved to Tulsa. Moving to Tulsa, I went to a public school. I was probably one of like 3 Jewish kids, so this was definitely an interesting shift. But I would say I actually had a very positive experience. And this is even growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I had a lot of fellow classmates who were very interested in Judaism, actually. I was
positively interested?
I would say interested, not really interested in like probably a religious way, but almost more of a I'm the first Jewish person they ever met way.
Oh, so kind of like looking for the horns and for the tail, that kind of interesting.
Hopefully, if they were, they didn't mention that.
All right. I'm curious because you did mention like this warm synagogue and warm community. What's your best memory of growing up in that community? I'm trying to hone in on the good experience of being Jewish, and not the one that's like textbook being Jewish, but really like a real human experience. Like what's that? Can you maybe share a personal experience?
Absolutely. Here's kind of a funny one. It was Yom Kippur, and it was a day where we went to service. My family went to services, got to miss school, so that was nice, of course. And we were standing there. I think it was either in between services or maybe it was right after services. And there was this just one of the funniest things happened. And of course, everyone's fasting. Well, for the most part, if that's within your ability to fast, amazing. And there was a young girl, probably about my age there. I was pretty young at this point. And she looks at her dad and says, "Dad, are we going to IHOP still after this?" And it just got quiet. And then of course everyone laughs, and it's, I mean, because it's funny. It's like, of course, we go to the services, we fast, and then and then everyone goes and gets their lunch. I mean, that's probably not everyone, but we actually pretty much would fast. But it was that, I would say that was just kind of a funny something that came up, because that definitely the overall kind of atmosphere was always warm, always friendly, lots of laughs, lots of love.
Is it still like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Do people help each other in the community as well, or is it more like it's mine is mine, yours is yours? I'll see you in the synagogue.
People help each other a lot. It's a small community of about 5,000 that I would say that kind of give or take over the years, when you have some people going off to college, some people coming back, so give or take on that number, but it's usually about 5,000, but close, very tight knit. I would say very well rounded in the way of helping especially young Jewish people have this strong sense of pride in their Judaism and their Jewish identity, whether that's programming around Israel, or art classes and on school, in Hebrew school, and or even just teaching about how we can be proud of ourselves as Jews. I would say it just continued to, I would say, really cement my Judaism as really a strong part of my identity as I grew up within this strong community.
And I'm curious, what part of being Jewish were they stressing is worth being proud of? I'm curious.
That's a great question, and I would say everything. Everything from, I mean, of course, there's the usual stuff when you're younger, watching what's the one movie that we always watch? I think it's Prince of Egypt or something. I was
about to say the Zohan or something, but okay.
Oh, no. No. Actually, I think I watched that movie like for the first time recently. But it was, I mean, everything from even within childhood type things like movies, and this just like understanding of Jewish history, understanding of overcoming the tragedies that we have faced, and I would say as we got older, this understanding of anti-Semitism and where it still exists, and being able to fight that and being educated on that, as well as really just, I would say one of the biggest things was community and family. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've taken from growing up there, actually. And I would say that's really a focal point and center of my Jewish identity, is our collective family identity.
This is also to some extent my experience. I think a lot of people, a lot of Jews have some of that in their kind of somewhere on the motherboard, right? There's all these areas that are very much about community and collaboration and support and being there, and this exchange that's happening, this constant chatter in the Jewish, right, community. But for some reason, I don't know why people either feel uncomfortable about bringing it out necessarily, or they kind of they think it's just a feature of being in that community, and maybe that it's like the same in every other community. I think maybe Jews are not seeing that as a real. I'm just curious if people saw it as like the main thing, or were there other things competing for, like, what's number one? Like in Israel, I'm sorry for the long diatribe, but like in Israel, a lot of times if you talk to people, it's like, oh, startup nation, we invented Waze and cherry tomatoes, and so it's like this kind of innovation and technology, not so much because we stick together very well. So I wonder, how is it on your end?
Interesting. And I would say for me, part of my everyday connection to my Jewish identity, even, I would say part of that, and actually let me go back to the more general sense. I would say I feel like it probably depends a lot where you grow up and the community that surrounds you. Because for myself, growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I think, and I don't know if people would be surprised, not surprised, not sure, but it was really, I would say, a very affirming community, even in non-Jewish spaces. I would say very affirming to the Jewish community. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of even everything from, I mean, your neighborly support to community interfaith events and just different things where involvement in the community and the community involvement with our community and that intermingling, I would say, really added to that affirmation. As when I was growing up, I felt constantly affirmed of my Judaism. And I would say that helped me be very comfortable with being very proudly and openly Jewish.
What was the glue, though?
I would say,
because I didn't have that. I know that there was a town near me where they had it. In my town, we totally didn't have it, and I can relate to that because I went to a summer camp that was Jewy. It wasn't like a Jewish summer camp, but it definitely had that feeling. I know the feeling you're talking about because we had it there. And I've been to some communities, like visiting friends from summer camp and other places, where I felt that. Especially, Saturday afternoon, and everyone's having meals and everyone's talking to each other and hanging out and all that. But I didn't have that, in where I grew up. And I'm wondering, what is the glue that, for example, you're an American growing up maybe in the 80s or something, or the 90s. I don't know when you grew up, but there's other kids are doing other things on Saturday. Other kids are doing other things after school. Other kids are doing other things around Christmas, other kids are doing other things. What is it that made you feel proud, and not just you, but the whole community connected to this? What was the glue there?
Absolutely. Also, to your question on, I was born in 1996, so grew up kind of late 90s, early 2000s. And I would say the glue of the community, it was, I mean, not to sound redundant, but very much that family feeling. But something that I would say drives that was really the intentionality of the leaders in our community. It was very much the leaders, from rabbis to, board of the synagogues, to the people at the JCC, the local Tulsa Jewish Federation, who really took the time and were so intentional to create an atmosphere that really, I would say, really just instilled such pride. And I mean, everything from even just how excited I was. I mean, I don't know if this sounds silly, but really the excitement I would have just to do, like, once a month, there was like Family Friday Shabbat. I mean, there's Shabbat every Friday at the synagogue, but there was specifically once a month, there was like a big Family Friday one. And so there was a lot of kids, a lot of big families, and that were showing up. It was like really big event. And that was one that I was always so excited about, because I had a lot of friends that would show up, a lot of friends from Hebrew school, even some friends that I went to public school with, like, that were Jewish, would also be there. So it was, I would say, really this intentionality, whether it's something like that, or it's the yearly Passover Seders, or the just different things from, we had a Purim festival or Israel Independence Day festival. The different things, I would say, was that intentionality. The glue really was that definitely that intentionality of bringing us together.
It's. I'm sorry. You want to follow up on that, Seth?
I wanted to scrub the video forward a little bit, but
I was
if
about
you
to
saw
also,
something from here.
Yeah, I was about to also fast forward from
From the bubble to
exactly.
when he pops the bubble.
We're not in I forgot the place, the town.
Not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, exactly. We're not in Kansas anymore. I want to move on to that as well. I just wanted to say that for me, it's funny because I also grew up. Again, you don't think about it. It's like kind of fish in water. You don't think about the water. It's like, okay, you go out to grandma. For me, my two grandmas lived in the same building, which is unusual, in another city. So we would drive to the other city, but there was like one on first floor, one on fourth floor. You'd have, the Friday meal there, and then the Saturday morning meal there, and like everything was kind of mixed up, and big family, relatively big. I mean, it's quite big. and a lot of like, kissing and hugging from, overly perfumed aunts and all that, and all the food and everything. And it was kind of like so much so that eventually I got up and ran off to New York for 20 years. But it did stick with me, like it was there. So even though I didn't appreciate it as a kid, it stuck with me. And Seth didn't have exactly that thing, or exactly that warm, hey, you do Jew experience. It's more like, tone it down a little bit, right? So we're fast forwarding to, when did you come out of the bubble? When did you realize that people are not all just running to hug the Jews?
That's such an interesting question, because I would say that bubble, it was like different bubbles over the years, if that makes sense. Of course, kind of that understanding of we're a very small people group, at a young age, kind of understanding we're a very small group, growing up in a Jewish household, it's like, oh, there must be like a ton of us or something. But, as you grow up realizing, oh, we're a very small people. And I think also in regards to resiliency and everything we've overcome, I think that also there's like a level of pride within that as well, as I learned more about our people when I was younger and growing up. But I would say in college, and it wasn't anything negative. It was just, I would say in my undergraduate experience, it was just really not a topic of conversation like at all, unless I particularly brought it up. I would say, I think I was really the only Jewish person I knew at my university. I'm sure there were others, but it was a decent sized university. But at least out of the people I usually surrounded myself with, I was pretty much the only Jewish person in my circles. And so I would say it was that bubble kind of popped of realizing, I would say, I don't know if that's hard to explain it. I think just realizing that especially when it comes to asking for support from other communities, really just having to be vocal myself and really having to say, hey, this is going on. This is affecting my people, and I want to see change. Please join me in this change, even if you are not a part of my people.
But what change? What was the problem?
Oh,
You make it sound so polite, as if like someone was parking in your space or something. Tell us what was going on.
Nothing particularly. I more mean like in the world, or if there was something in the media. But actually, I will say my college experience very positive, and actually faced no anti-Semitism within my undergraduate experience.
When did you see the difference between like our people were historically resilient and, oh my gosh, we're living in a historic moment right now and the same kind of thing is happening? Like, when did that, right now I live in a nice Jewish bubble, but in the past our people went through a lot of things, and today I have pride about who we are. And then there's this thing of, oh wow, we're in that same cycle again. Where does that happen?
We're about to need to be resilient again.
I would say that was actually a pretty recent shift and a pretty recent understanding within the last couple of years. I would say really 2 years, probably within the last 2 years, in the sense of there's always, you'd hear on the news, there's maybe there was an anti-Semitic attack or this and that would happen over the years, but there was nothing that I would say like caused this personal alarm. And I would say that really depended. There've been different, unfortunately, there have been different acts of anti-Semitism that have happened over the years. But I would say for myself, when that bubble, I would say that imagery officially kind of really understood, I would say it was really within the past couple of years, and seeing a not only social anti-Semitism, but an institutional anti-Semitism as well.
Where did you see it?
So definitely within some political spaces, but as well as on the college campus. I think, and I will say even today, that is I would say college campuses, and it's not all college campuses. There are plenty that have no issues at all.
Who's the worst?
That's a great question. I would say there's probably a few up there. I don't want to name them. But
Why not? It's okay. I mean, I think the point I'm trying to make, and I'm sorry to derail you from the rest of your answer, but the point I'm trying to make is that I think it's the ones that are actually more, have more resources, are more developed, are more, on the surface, more open. That's where you actually meet anti-Semitism. You don't meet anti-Semitism in some, in the backwoods of some place. It's actually, right, the University of Berkeley. It's in it's on the shores. It's not like, in the mountains somewhere. That was my point. We don't have to name
that's a great point, and I think that unfortunately, in also you'll have these campuses that are supposedly will label, they'll label themselves as very diverse, very inclusive, yet oftentimes Jews are left out. So I will say oftentimes it is the more, I would say, labeling themselves as progressive campuses. But what I would say to that is that if they're leaving any groups out, and of course we're focusing on anti-Semitism, so if they're leaving Jews out, they're actually not that progressive. And I would say really just kind of that understanding that within the past couple of years, seeing anti-Semitism really reach an interesting height on college campuses, I would say really where that leads to, and the problem with that is that when you're teaching anti-Semitism, or when people are teaching essentially to leave out Jewish people, then there's issues, because people will, if part of their education is, whether that's overtly or by just default leaving out Jews, they will go on to continue leaving out Jews out of their spaces.
So we're slowly inching our way towards the big questions. Why? Why is that a thing? Where does it come from? Why doesn't it go away? You'd expect as people get more educated, more tolerant, more open, with more access to information, with everything, you'd expect that, Jews would also get a break along with the rest of the minorities of the world. But somehow it's not happening. What do you think? What's your theory?
I think historically, and I think it connects to today, I think historically, unfortunately, Jews are often blamed for the ills of society. I think that's like a quote somewhere. But in reality, we are often blamed for, there's this, that's what happened in World War II with the Holocaust. It was everything that was going wrong in Germany and Europe. It's because the Jews, it's because the Jewish people who own the businesses and own, all the stereotypes and the conspiracy theories, all of that kind of really adding up to what happened. And I think it's really a lack of education, definitely. But I think it's a lack of education specifically.
Wait, we don't own all the businesses? I thought we did.
I wish. I wish. Let me know.
I thought we did, and we controlled the media. We're just doing a terrible job.
That's how I know that we definitely don't, because we would. Well, media isn't that great, but so maybe that's not the best comparison, because the media is not so great in reporting things anyway. But no. So I think it really is, in a sense, not necessarily a repeat of history, but a repeat of a specific cycle of people just blaming Jews for the societal ills. People blaming Jews when something goes wrong. You see politicians doing it today, unfortunately, on Twitter, saying, this is happening in your community because Israel exists, or this is happening in your community because what the Jewish people support. And so I think it's interesting, because we see this, I would say, through an indoctrination of misinformation, and then adding that on top of a lack of education specifically on Jews and Jewish history, you have essentially a cycle kind of repeating itself of this anti-Semitism spreading.
But I'm curious. What you're saying is true, and it is definitely, when you have a wave that's moving, there's already some momentum. It's easy to just kind of add to it, push it. It's much harder to get something going. But once it's in motion, you can, we can add to it, you can direct it, you can use it, right? It's hard to get people, out of their homes, off their couches, and protest. But once they're out protesting, you can direct that mob anywhere. They can burn stuff, they can push for legislation, they can do things because they're mobilized, right? So in the same way, you could argue that yes, this Jew hate has been going on for so many years. It's like a slow moving train. You can always hop on, hop off. It's always moving. The question I'm asking is why the Jews? And we're not seeing a return to black slavery, God forbid, right? We're not seeing that. We're not seeing a persecution of other minorities, a repeat of that. It's like, groups of people, nations go through their cycles, but there's no return to. It's like there's no worsening of conditions, right? Once you reach a certain level, that's it. You're not going back. Now you can suffer on this level and then this level. But Jews, it's almost like a continuous cycle. And like I said, it's easy today to get educated. You don't have to, try that hard. So what does your gut tell you? I mean, maybe it's not an official textbook thing, but
my gut tells me truthfully that while it is easy to get educated, it really depends what spaces you're in, because through communicating, I would say, with people in different political aisles, all different types of spaces, belief systems, and not that I've just spoken with some insane amount of people or anything, but I would say the idea of people are educated on the things that they want to be educated on. Additionally, if people attend universities where they're being educated on specific things, they may not reach also specific topics. So there's not one standard education at every college campus or high school. And so if they're not teaching about, for example, Jewish history the same way at every high school, at every college campus, you're not having this standard of understanding of Jewish people. And I think that's where it comes from. Yes, there's plenty of educated people, but I think the issue really lies in what are they being educated on and what are they hearing about any group, really. And when it comes to anti-Semitism, are they hearing about it? Are they hearing about it at all? And if they are hearing about it, what is it like? And I think a really big thing with that too is, are they only learning about the Holocaust? Yes, they definitely need to learn about that. But anti-Semitism did not begin nor end with the Holocaust. And that is one of the things that I would say is when it comes to education on the Jewish people, I think really outside of the Holocaust, which even that is lacking in education, people need to learn more about it and understand the severity. But also people need to learn more about how anti-Semitism has existed in multiple spaces, as well as Jews in general in our history.
So your work now, is it education work on college campuses?
It's education and programming, and our motto, or really just kind of vision, is education is the road to peace.
Yeah, so I was totally shocked. Maybe we need to send you some of the specific episodes, but I had a general education. I became religious for like almost 7 years. I read tons about being a Jew. But when Leo and I embarked on this journey, I was shocked at how different, like we have this one episode we did where nobody here is giving any kudos to any Nazis, so don't get me wrong in any way. But we didn't know. We discovered that the Nazis tried to move the Jews out of Germany into Israel, for example, before the war. Now, it would be the same if someone came to America and said, "Hey, Jews, if you all move to Israel now, we won't kill you." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" I know it sounds insane, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that Nazis came to Israel and tried to help Jews move there before the war. Like, there's just so many. I didn't know that that the Hanukkah story started out as a civil war between Jews. I didn't know that before the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, the Jews were killing each other. We're in another civil war. Like there's
En
so
masse. En masse.
yeah, there's so much about the education that that I just didn't know, and I wonder, like, how can we educate the generation that's coming up to understand how much is in our hands. And yeah, of course, like if someone's coming to kill you, kill them first, or like if someone's specifically doing something aggressive, like there has to be some kind of reaction to it. But simultaneously, as this generation's coming up, the generation who will raise the next families, who will be the next leaders, like how do we feel and how do we impress upon the next generation of Jewish leaders and community organizers how much of the solution to all this, can we say solution when we talk about this?
As long as it's not a final solution.
Okay, how much is this, of the solution is really in our hands? It's not about like trying to make everybody else stop doing everything, but which we have to do that somewhat, but that so much of it, like what you talked about in your childhood, that feeling, to develop that feeling everywhere. If people feel from us that we're loving, caring, community-oriented people, then it's not a lot of reason to hate there. So my question to you is about education, and the work you're doing now. How can we educate our generation to understand how much of our future lies in our hands and not just in trying to tie the hands of other anti-Semites?
Absolutely. I would say, one, teaching ourselves and our people the pride that it needs for us to stand up for ourselves, for each other within our community. I would say another thing would be gaining allies, or taking our friends, whether that's if we have non-Jewish family, Jewish family, bringing our people in, our circles in, and that education piece of educating friends and family, and on college campuses, peers and other students, maybe even faculty and staff. As we continue to teach an understanding of who we are and what we're dealing with, I truly believe that is something that can be a solution. And in the way that I would fight for any group experiencing hate, there's been a large rise in anti-Asian hate right alongside of anti-Semitism as well as racism. And one of the ways that I think different communities really fight this hate is bringing in their friends, their family, and especially saying to the communities outside, fight for us as well. And so I would say, for me, when focusing on anti-Semitism, is talking to my friends, talking to family members, or talking to peers, really just this idea of educating on who we are, what we're dealing with, and how we can help. And that's not an easy task. That definitely is not an easy task.
Who are we?
So we're the Jewish people.
What does it mean, though? I'm not putting you against the wall. I'm saying, like, it's really critical.
I have a quote. Maybe we can, because we like to also turn to the sources, Jewish sources, people who lived thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, and it sounds like they have a lot of wisdom, And the interesting thing is that not only Jews, even non-Jews take a lot of direction, right? Moral direction, legal direction, right? From Jewish texts, right? A lot, the legal system is built on it. The government, organization, a lot of how we run our lives actually is rooted in these texts. But surprisingly, we didn't take all the texts, into consideration. We just took the bits that fit, what we're doing right now. But for example, Rav Kook is saying, who was the first chief rabbi of Israel, and a fascinating guy, and he wrote a lot. He says, Amalek, Hitler, and so forth awaken us toward redemption. Just a simple line like that, right? Amalek, Hitler, so forth awaken us toward redemption. Aman, yeah, all those like different enemies, right? They sort of like they force us to reckon with something. The question is what? And then Yehuda Ashlag, I don't know if you heard that name before. He wrote the commentary in the book of Zohar, which is considered like one of the main books of one of the main Jewish texts. Very little understood, right? But nevertheless, very important text. And he says he says, it is upon the Israeli nation to qualify itself and all the people of the world to develop until they take upon themselves that sublime work of the love of others, which is the ladder to the purpose of creation. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. This is not like, hey, maybe be nice to. No, there's something to do with this love of others, this quality. And
that's what I meant when we said, like, who are we? I think we are, and that's kind of the heart of the matter, is if we are a people who are supposed to bring love to the world, if we're supposed to be this light up to the nations, then we better get to it. And by doing that, maybe we don't need, or we wouldn't need all of these forces on the outside constantly pushing us in such a brutal way.
Interesting. And I think there was a point that you made, Leo, about how when anti-Semitism has kind of risen, how that's kind of that, I guess, the pressure that's causing us to act. And I would say really how that, for me, how that relates today is, while there is anti-Semitism, it's at a time where I believe there is plenty of room to fight and educate. And with that education and with that, and really with fighting anti-Semitism, I think truly, in making it known what people can do to help us and support us is really a way that we can get to not dealing with anti-Semitism. I know it's probably more simple terms, but there was actually a quote that I thought was really interesting. Theodor Herzl said, anti-Semitism rises, and this may not be word for word. He said, anti-Semitism rises, and so do I. Some might take that to mean haters are my motivators or something, as we all say it now. And I think there's some level of truth to it for really all communities, in the way that we fight for ourselves in different ways on a daily basis. But it's only when we're met with hate, maybe, that we're actually really calling for action. And I think the reality of that makes a lot of sense. If you're not being met with threats every day, you're living your life. Once you're met with a threat, you're calling to action. So I think that has a lot to do with, we see anti-Semitism, we're standing up to it. And I think that's okay. I think that's very like a natural response. I think what we can do now is, going back to that education piece, is really, if we educate now, we can have a better future tomorrow.
Educate about what do we educate about?
Jews, our history, what
do we need to tell? What do we need to tell everyone?
I would say to listen to Jews when we say something is anti-Semitic. Listen to Jews when we say a political figure is saying anti-Semitic things, even if they are a popular political figure. It is hard to point out things people are doing when they're well liked, when they're doing things bad, when they're well liked. And in the way that we need to, whether it's a political figure, whether it's a lack of education, or something that is just, whether it's just misinformation or just really just straightforward anti-Semitism, I would say really what we need to tell people is to listen. That I would say within my own intersectional identities, I would say that that's what I do within all my identities. I say, listen.
You were in San Francisco, so
Mhm.
you probably dealt with some anti-Semitism on campus. So can you illustrate an example of a situation there that you dealt with that
Yeah,
really
so
made you confront your beliefs and feel maybe helpless at the beginning of it? Like, wow, I thought I'm with all these people. I'm progressive. I'm here. Like, I'm on your team. Like, how can it be all of a sudden you're looking at me like I'm a baby killer, an apartheid supporter? Like, what are you talking about? I thought we were all in this movement together, and then you're struck with that. So,
yeah, so I would say even in San Francisco, I would say it wasn't particularly on my college campus that I experienced really anything myself. I would say there is a lot of anti-Semitism though within the college spaces within the San Francisco and Bay Area in general. And uh, I happened to go to a university where I had a better experience than others, but many
Right.
students went to many students went to school experiencing they couldn't even be proud of simply being Jewish or even the most simple thing of celebrating Hanukkah or uh,
Right.
posting something that they're proud to post on their Instagram.
Right.
It's yeah,
Well, I mean, I think this train has already left the station. Excuse the terrible pun, but it's like we're in it. Like I think that's, as you said, some colleges it's worse than others. You could get lucky. I also have a friend, Jewish friend. He goes to a college in upstate New York. It's smaller, more isolated. Great. He's having a great time. He heard about anti-Semitism on college campuses elsewhere, but not. It's not like, he didn't get a swastika on his dorm room. You know what I mean? It's like he's not feeling it on his flesh. So to him, it's another thing. You have the war in Ukraine, you have anti-Semitism, you have all those things in the background. The question that I want to ask is, maybe if we zoom out from what's happening right now, two questions really, kind of like big. And again, I'm more maybe appealing more to your gut feeling, instinct than anything else. But do you feel, or do you agree with the statement that rise of anti-Semitism is all throughout Jewish history? Rise in anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish sentiments, general, aggression towards the Jewish population is always preceded by division among the Jewish people. I'm curious, what does your gut tell you?
I would I would say when it comes to Jewish division, the thing is, as much as that may have correlated or been part of like during certain times where we've experienced anti-Semitism, the way I view anti-Semitism and any bigotry is it's not the fault of the people being oppressed by that bigotry. And so no matter the division that was going on, whether that's today, yesterday, intra-community issues are always going to happen, especially in our community, two Jews, three opinions. There's always going to be disagreements, but in reality, the oppressors are never the oppressed, the oppressed are never at fault for what they're experiencing. The oppressed also is really not responsible for fixing it. We will fight it, obviously, all communities do, but in reality, anti-Semitism is actually a non-Jewish problem for them to.
So I think this now we're getting to the heart of the matter. I think because this is this has been the stickiest point in all of our conversations. Not with everyone. I mean,
Mhm.
people have different opinions for sure, but my and Seth as well. I think when we did our investigation and looked at patterns in history, when we looked at what Jewish sages are writing about what Jews should be doing in the world, when we look at things like network science and how systems of things are organized in the world, there's a lot of compelling evidence to show that different parts play different roles inside the human system, and maybe Jews play a certain role in it. Maybe others have other roles as well, and if they play that role poorly, the system will simply react to it. So it's not exactly a question of the guy who is now hating me. It's my fault. and therefore he's okay. Rather, the system that is compelling us to do so many things, system of nature, which compels us to do most of the things we're doing, we're not choosing consciously. Let's face it, our brain receives 11 million bits of information every second. Every second, out of those, 35,000 decisions are made daily. 220 of them on food, by the way. Only 70 are conscious, right? Only 40 of those you can focus on. And really, at any given moment, you can deliberate and focus on only 4 things. So you could say that a lot of stuff is happening in the background without your conscious participation, yours, mine, the anti-Semite, okay? So what we're posing here is again, it's a bit radical, is saying, could it be that there's something that we can do in addition to fighting the direct manifestation of anti-Semitism? Like someone is waving a thing at me, someone is, wants to exclude me from somewhere, spray my dorm room, whatever. In addition to these sort of defensive maneuvers, could we do something more influential, more impactful, more meaningful?
I think of it as like health of the body, for example. So I get sick with something. So on the one hand, I have to go, and I'm not really into medicines and things like that. I want to be naturally healthy, but I go to the doctor, I get an antibiotic. But simultaneously, like I have to
Change
clean
my
up my
lifestyle.
act, the way I'm living. What?
Yeah, change my lifestyle. Yeah, I was just
I have
saying.
to change my lifestyle, even more extreme. Someone gets, I have a good childhood friend who got prostate cancer. So he, like, on the one hand, and he's actually dealing with it in a really interesting way. He's finding all of these different techniques, but you have to be aggressive about doing something specifically about that. Simultaneously, he cut out the cocaine, he cut out the cigarettes. He started exercising, he's drinking water, he's getting, sleep every day. So you have to deal with the problem, but also we have to deal with the root of it. And so many creative, intelligent Jews, like we need to bifurcate, as they say in Silicon Valley. We need to, like, on one hand, deal with the attack. On the other hand, put a bunch of resources into creating, who are we? What are we supposed to be?
Western and Eastern medicine, exactly a good example, as Seth brought it up, because Western medicine usually deals with allopathy, right? Symptoms, urgent care. Let's fix that. Surgically remove that. You do all these actions that are very strong, kind of like on the surface, invasive sometimes, right? Strong medication, radiation to deal with a problem. But Eastern medicine is but the holistic body. What's out of balance in the whole body? How can you restore balance to the body? And if you remember about it already, when like the cancer is already it's hard. Like Eastern medicine would not help you. But if you do it enough in advance, if you rebalance yourself, right, reharmonize yourself before, there's a greater chance for you to eliminate or to ward off or to overcome these problems. So I guess our question is exactly on that level.
It's
There's
not
no
even just a
question.
question for me. I'm excited for you, Josh, and I'm excited to be talking to you because you're connected with the future leaders and the future builders of the Jewish community, and the idea that in addition to the education of how we combat it, but also, like, who are we essentially, and is there some mission that we have or some purpose to who we are, that the Egyptians rose and fell, the Greeks rose and fell, the Romans rose and fell, the Persians rose and fell, but we're still here. The Nazis rose and fell, but
Yeah, not
the Jewish people,
Rosenfeld.
not Rosenfeld, but the Jewish people are still here.
Is it so outlandish to think that our job is to bring unity to people? Is it a crazy idea? I guess that's what I want to ask. Is it a crazy idea that our job in the world is to unite people? Not the technology part, not the financial part, not the media part. The technology that unites people, that allows people to have two Jews to have 3 opinions, and yet be able to hug above them.
And even on Yom Kippur, when that
Yes.
family wanted to go to IHOP, like everybody was like in on the joke. It's not like, oh, you're a sinner, you're this. It's like, you do what you do. We're gonna do what we do. Like we can be different, and still we can still have this warm feeling between us.
That's our question. Can that be
Absolutely.
the holistic solution in addition to all the urgent care that we were talking about earlier?
Absolutely. And this actually is something I'm very passionate about in that connecting piece. And actually a quote that is one of my favorites is by Emma Lazarus, Jewish Zionist. And she said, we are not, and it's again, not word for word, but you've probably heard this quote before. It's, we're not free until we are all free. And I truly believe that to my core in the way that, and actually like the term that I use is collective liberation, in the way that using we're not free until we're all free and collective liberation to say we all have to come up together. And I think a big part of that in that connector piece that you both are mentioning is true. I think in many ways, there is so much we can do to connect communities. And whether that's been our involvement in civil rights movement, women's rights movement, and continuous even today, that's, it's not even a thing of the past. I mean, it's a part of the past as well as our current day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What we're saying is, how do we do it among our own communities? Because we're very good at doing it with other communities. But when it comes home, it's like, I don't want to hear about this group, right? Like the JFF, no, the JCA, yeah, the ACJ, it's like different organizations. We're fighting for money, we're fighting for power. I want to see this more of a, let's see more of that happening. That quote that you said, I know it as, as long as someone is not happy, no one is happy. And that's how I know that quote. And speaking of happiness, again, guess what? There's been a huge study on happiness, many studies on happiness. Everybody wants to be happy. There's especially a meta study by Columbia University that they looked at 400 different studies. And what's the one thing that makes people happiest all the time above everything else? Social connections. That's the number one cause of happiness, more than exercising and then this and this and then money and all that. Social connections. So check this out. The Jews are sitting on something that they naturally have going. We naturally have that feel good, warm, sticky, gossipy, in your nose, in your face, too much, but okay, we need it. We have that. And we're not like actually making that our number one export to the world. We're just not. It's always a joke. It's the butt of a joke. I just saw a CDC special. One of my clients, they work with charities. They help charitable organizations crowdfund, all that stuff. They did a special for the CDC led by what's the guy's who plays George Costanza? What's his name? Jason Alexander, right? So he's like, oh, we're Jews, and he's making fun of this whole we're coming together, and there were other people there, and it was like, oh, you guys are Jews. Like, no, I'm not a Jew, and like, I'm not a Jew, but we're here for the for that. It was funny, but it's always like at the back of at the end of the joke. It's not in the forefront. It's not the number one thing. That's the question that we're throwing at you. Can we make it more important?
Or can you do it with all the college kids?
Yeah, exactly.
Tomorrow.
I think we can. And I think especially within our own community, I think what really binds us is everything from Hillel's. It's the work that Hillel does. It's the work that the on-campus or local Chabad does, or the synagogue that brings over boxes and boxes of matzah so the few Jewish kids on campus are able to be kosher for Passover. It's making you try gefilte fish at least once. And then, actually I like it. So I don't know, hot take,
stuff.
but
it's potent stuff.
It is, but it's good. But I would say really that intra-community work, yes, I think that's a really interesting point on. We are good with working with other communities and then really focusing on each other. And I think I definitely come from a space where I grew up in a space where if you were Jewish, like you had a community that fully backed you. Didn't matter literally anything you could put on a list about yourself.
Exactly.
You were part of that community and you were fully supported in the different ways that you might need
to be in this situation like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine if all the Jews, wherever they were, felt that? We had a guy here a few weeks ago, Tyler Samuels. He's a black Jamaican Jew living in Canada, majored in history and all that. But when he was meeting the more traditional Ashkenazi Jews in Toronto, they were like, where are you from? It wasn't like, hey, come on, you're a Jew. And that's the thing that we were trying to overcome, that natural division and alienation that happens right within our own ranks. Instead of saying Jew is this ideal of unity. If you share that ideal, you're part of the family. Come here, no matter what you have on the list, as you said. If you're into this unity thing, come on in. That's it. It's so simple.
And it's so unique about Jews because you have black ones, white ones, gay ones, straight ones, fat ones, skinny ones, religious ones, secular ones, all Jews. It's like this little microcosm. And if we can figure out, I mean, what we're kind of coming to, Leo and I, is if we can figure out in this microcosm with every kind of person represented there to make some kind of unity, it can be an example. And I'm just juiced up about the fact that you're on campus because that's the kind of active part of society there.
Yeah.
And that is such a good question. And I think one of the things that really binds us is our shared history. Our shared history, no matter whether you're an Ethiopian Jew, whether you're a Hispanic Jew, or whether you're a gay Jew, or part of so many different intersectional identities. I think the beauty of our community is that because we're so diverse and we have so many different perspectives and we have so many ways we can go about coming together. And so I think, especially on the college campus, it would really be, I mean, aside from just education of who we are, I mean, really just teaching students, no matter where they fall within that intersectional identity space, but they're Jewish, you're Jewish, and saying you're Jewish, you're part of my family. Like that's your family. Yeah.
And the irony is that I studied a bit the work of BDS on campus and elsewhere, and BDS had a very, very simple narrative when you compared it to the narrative of the state of Israel and the Zionist work there and occupation, and that. You could have stood there and explained things for 3 hours if someone cared to listen. It doesn't matter. Didn't matter at all because the narrative wasn't short, simple, sweet. The only difference is that narrative of the BDS is against someone else. What we're saying is we can offer a new narrative for the Jewish people. We're all about unity. Jew means unity. If you're into that, great. It's not against anyone. It's for unity. That's it. Here's a banner. Hang it up in the campus. If you don't, you can be part of whatever other group. This is the meta group, the group that's all about this thing, and we think that it can be an appealing story, because it doesn't need all that explanation. All the other stuff that's happening is still happening because people are learning about who they really are. But if we can ascribe that to us or reclaim that, Yehudi from the word yichud, yachad, simple.
Absolutely. And I think that reclaiming piece is so important because it's that reclaiming, and even the most proud Jew, reclaiming the identity as a Jew, whether that's, of course, that's my religion, but my identity, my ethnic makeup, what makes my family history, what makes my people's, the times they thrive, the times they didn't. It's our Jewish identity that has carried us through, and our collective Jewish identity and love for our identity that has carried us through. And I think to continue instilling that in young Jews is what is exactly going to bring more Jewish people together. And maybe even reclaiming the identity of really, for myself, really, it's been this journey of reclaiming I'm Jewish, but also reclaiming that identity as Judean and reclaiming that Judean identity and where we come from and our roots, no matter where you were born, no matter where we're Jewish, and we come from one place, and we live in many different places right now, and that's okay. But we come from one place, we're one family from one area, and it's amazing. And I think that is something that we can continue to teach the next generation. I think as they continue to feel more and more connected, it'll continue to be this call to action within our community.
Great note to end on. Seth, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I wish you so much good luck with the next generation of Jews coming through campus, and to understand, to feel, maybe even more than understand. I mean, you have to understand, the history and all that kind of stuff, but to feel what we have going for us, and how good the future can be when, like the kind of community you grew up in was a small bubble, but to imagine to increase that bubble eventually to include all humanity. But yeah, I'm excited for you, and please look to us as resources if it's ever worthwhile, or we could be of help with anything. But I think it's great that you're working with college kids, and good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Same for me. Seth kind of took the words out of my mouth, so now I can say the real stuff. It was great. We don't get enough of an insight into this next generation, and I'm very happy about it. Very happy about the ability to talk about this openly. Yes, we agree, we disagree. That's okay. Some stuff rubs us the wrong way. That's okay. Some stuff we said was crazy. That's okay. But we talked about it. We looked each other in the eye. We said, we're in it together. And I think it's an exciting premise to give Jews, and I'm inviting everyone who's listening to us to kind of join this, get under this banner, whatever you're doing, whatever group you're in. Also come to this meta group, and I think it's a fine role to have in the world. Everybody's got to have a role, a function in the system. I think this is a great function, and if you feel like it, come to us, talk to us, send someone to talk to us. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, the Jew Function. These are the Jew Function Talks, where we invite people to really talk about this idea, this crazy idea of radical unity that maybe is the missing spice that we just need to add to everything else we're doing. So we really thank Josh for being with us today, for taking the time, for waking up early in Texas somewhere, and Seth in Princeton, and from me in Israel. We're the Jew Function, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. And if I can just say one more thing, I just really appreciate your time today, and also just kind of want to end on the note of we are our future. We are, in a way, we are our temple, and there's no one who can destroy that.
Amen. That's why I wore that shirt.